Son of Seafoam by CaffeinatedFlumadiddle, Chapter 12. The Titan's cabin was nice, sort of. A little haunted, most honestly. Percy couldn't help but feel like the ghosts of all his dead siblings were hidden in the walls. It was mostly lonely, though. Percy had grown up to the sounds of Droop watching reruns of America's Next Top Model, and the smell of perfume rather than sea salt, and hearing the subtle crashes of waves. He rolled over with a sigh. He supposed he had agreed to this, though. Much like the child of two divorced parents, Percy had proposed spending a certain amount of time between Aphrodite and Poseidon's cabin to keep from any escalating arguments. The whole cabin switching would only be an issue for a bit longer, at least. Soon enough, Percy would be returning to his mortal mother. Maybe then he could sleep better with the obnoxious lights and horns of New York blasting into his room. From the other end of the cabin, a knock sounded. Percy sat up, then checked the time. It was past curfew. Frowning, he grabbed Riptide and wandered over to the door to creak it open. Nobody was there. Someone cleared their throat, and Percy looked down. "Lacey?" he asked, and opened the door wider. "What are you doing here?" "I missed you," Lacey said, as if she hadn't seen him a few hours ago. Then walked inside. Percy stared. Letting the door shut again as he tried to process how this little girl made it by the harpies. "Can we watch a movie?" she asked him. Percy opened his mouth to try and answer when another knock sounded. Cautiously, he opened the door. "Oh, Drew," he said, relieved. "Lacey is here." "How's the lighting in your bathroom?" Drew asked, shoving her way inside. Percy spluttered. Behind her was Mitchell, Sam, and Valentina, all waiting patiently to come in as well. Mitchell grinned wickedly at him before ruffling his hair in passing. Nobody gave an explanation as to why they were crashing his cabin, but sure. He looked out at the door, kind of expecting more Aphrodite kids, but instead he found Bianca and Hazel appearing from the shadows. "I just think it's a good idea to have, a campaign or something," Bianca was saying as they walked up. "Sorry we're late," she added when she caught Percy's eye. "For what?" Percy asked, legitimately bewildered by this wild turn of events. Bianca's eyes narrowed. "Oh, look, he's playing dumb again," she said. Percy sighed. He knew he would be getting shit for a long time over his revealed identity, but Bianca in particular seemed to take it personally. Her and big surprise, Annabeth's voice came. Bianca and Hazel turned around to wave at her. "It's to hide the fact she's actually a god in disguise," she drawled out, as she reached over and plucked something from the air. Luke rippled to the surface. Percy almost jerked back. He hadn't seen Luke since the end of the war. He looked pretty good, actually. A little irritable, but that was probably understandable. "Because I said so," Luke said to himself in absolute disgust as he marched towards the cabin. "That's the line he's going to use with me, because he said so," he said and stormed inside. "Yeah, right. I can leave Olympus if I want to. I'll show him," he muttered. Percy turned back to Annabeth. "I had to sneak him out. Apparently Hermes said he wasn't allowed to leave tonight for whatever reason. It's causing some emotional distress." "You know what else causes emotional distress?" Bianca asked. Annabeth grinned at her. "Being lied to? Finding out your friend is a child of Poseidon? Not being able to see through the new kid's ploy to get claimed by the wrong god? Discovering that the random Aphrodite kid has multiple identities?" "I'm so sorry," Hazel snorted as she hugged Percy. "I'm sure you'll only have to put up with this for another year," she assured him. Percy rolled his eyes. Since his identity was revealed, things have been interesting. Most of his close friends, like Bianca and Annabeth, mainly just gave him shit for it. The Aphrodite cabin was more concerned with him not switching allegiances. They had a very strict rule that Percy would be part of their cabin for every Capture the Flag game, and if he tried to break the sacred covenant, they would tell their mom. Percy did not break the sacred covenant. That being said, not everyone was super thrilled about it. The fear of Big Three kids didn't completely go away. He wasn't sure it ever would. Campers who he had once been cordial with now ignored him. Most scattered when he walked by or lowly whispered when his back was turned. A few even still tried to kill him, though that was met with swift justice from multiple people. There were even the few who felt Percy did Aphrodite a grave disrespect and solely referred to him as Poseidon's child, somehow. Somehow that bothered him more than the attempted murder. Not to complain, but why are you guys even here? He asked. Nobody was answering this for him. From beside him, the air shimmered. Selena says you haven't been sleeping well in this cabin, Rode greeted. Percy jumped. Hey, she grinned. I should warn you that Dad heard about the Aphrodite kids all coming to your cabin and decided to send Tyson, she said, and also walked inside. Percy flushed. They were here to comfort him? Oh gods, that was maybe a little embarrassing. Before he could object, whispered bickering caught his attention. Being unreasonable, Will was saying hotly as he walked up with an exasperated Nico. Why not? He demanded. I don't like guns. You like guns, Nico told him. I prefer a sword. So, you have an automatic arm, Nico. It wouldn't technically even be a gun. It's like an Iron Man and Winter Soldier hybrid. You can just blast stuff out of your hand. Who is Iron Man and Winter Soldier? Nico frowned. Will sighed. Besides, if I put blasters in my hands, I couldn't do this, he said, and moved a panel on the celestial bronze hand to reveal several mythomagic cards. Will stared at him, then turned to Percy. You can have him, he said, and marched into the cabin. Nico turned bright red, eyes widening as he stumbled after Will with a yell of outrage and swearing revenge. Percy didn't know what to make of that, so he went to shut the door, only for a battle cry to recapture his attention. Wait for us, Grover said, waving a scolding finger as he trotted up with Tyson in tow. Tyson wasted no time scooping Percy into a hug as Grover loudly complained about Percy's lack of Irish messaging. Jamie, who had somehow snuck in with Troy, and Lacey squealed in delight when they saw who had arrived. Tyson! Sisters! Tyson roared as they raced back outside to tackle him. Can we pretty please give you another makeover? Lacey asked him hopefully as she grabbed his hand. I have more glitter. No, Jamie objected. I want to give him a mohawk. Glitter and mohawk? Tyson said solemnly. Jamie and Lacey both looked at one another before nodding in unison and dragging Tyson inside. Percy shook his head before turning back to Grover with apologies for his lack of communication, though he did call the guy every other day. Maybe Grover was right. It was way too little. He was about to try and enter his cabin again when he noticed one last figure appearing. Hey, Selena called, dragging Clarice along with her. We brought snacks, she sang. Clarice threw a bag of chips at Percy's face. You did this? Percy asked her. Selena grinned. I don't need half the camp here babysitting me, he said. Selena let go of Clarice and crossed her arms over her chest. It isn't babysitting, she objected. It is holding a very nice party that you just weren't aware you were hosting, she said, and then pinched Percy's cheeks because she was annoying. I'm pretty sure I taught you how to host a party, right? Percy rolled his eyes, but he couldn't ignore the funness twisting in his chest as he lightly pushed her inside. Whatever. Should I make cookies? He asked, and the entire cabin cheered. Karen is totally going to bust all of you being here. He laughed and then snapped his fingers. Hey, don't touch the sewing machine, he added to Annabeth. I'm making clothes for Estelle. I'm the daughter of Athena, Annabeth sniffed as she withdrew her hand. You'd be very lucky to have my input on anything craft-related. That reminds me, though, I weaved Estelle a blanket, she added, and another knock came. Percy spun around. How many people were coming? He opened the door to find Calypso and Rachel waiting. I also weaved Estelle a blanket, Calypso greeted. Percy didn't even ask how she overheard that comment from outside. Percy looked around. Had his cabin somehow expanded to accommodate everyone? Yeah, well, I'm painting a mural in her room, Rachel said and shook her head. Which is a bit of a pain in the ass because Poseidon is trying to be involved, but Aphrodite says he doesn't get a say, since it isn't his kid. And then Poseidon says you aren't her kid, and I'm just sitting there trying to figure out if I'm supposed to put horses on the wall or not. She huffed and then peered inside. Are you making cookies? She asked suddenly and stepped inside. Percy shook his head and then looked back outside. Anyone else? He asked. And there was a grumble from everyone as they all looked around. Rode started counting everyone. Scoffing, Percy closed the door again and walked towards the little kitchen area of his cabin that seemed to only appear when he conveniently needed it. Rachel was already sitting on the counter, listening intently to Will explaining something or another about the infirmary while Nico frowned at him. Wait, Nico said slowly. I thought you went back to your cabin last night. Will shrugged. I was a little busy, so I just stayed the night, he said dismissively. Nico's frown deepened. But yeah, blood transfusions are a little tricky. It's not like we have a lot of. But you slept, right? Nico interrupted. Will looked at him. You always are annoying me by getting 8 hours of sleep, right? You got that amount too, he asked. Will's mouth popped open before shutting it again a few times. Ooh, Rachel sang, swinging her feet from the counter. Someone's in trouble, she said. Ignoring Will's outraged look, Nico narrowed his eyes. It's different. I don't make a habit of it, Will said defensively. Besides, Nico doesn't care. You're a hypocrite, William Solace, Nico said and jabbed a finger to his chest. Percy walked over to where Bianca was watching the interaction with a mug of hot chocolate that Calypso had started handing out. I cannot believe this. Spying on your own brother? Percy asked her. Bianca shook her head in exasperation. Do you think he's figured out their friends then? He asked her. Bianca snorted. Percy looked back at where Will held up his hands in surrender at Nico's attack. You know, Percy added thoughtfully, I can't help but wonder. He trailed off, treading carefully. He wasn't sure what Bianca knew or thought to be super blunt on the subject. Bianca glanced at him. Despite Percy's lack of explanation, understanding flickered behind her eyes. Definitely. Huh, Percy said and nodded. I should have maybe seen that sooner, he mused, and then crossed his arms over his chest. Does he know? If he does, then he hasn't talked to me about it, she said and turned to Percy. You know, he has a crush on you, right? You're going to disrespect Will like that? That's an eventual thing, Bianca said, and Percy shook his head. Don't worry. It's just my love magic, muddling up his thoughts. I will kick your ass, Bianca said, punching his arm. I just hope whenever he does figure it out, that he doesn't take it badly, she said with a shake of her head. You and Costo were good for him. We grew up hearing different stuff on the matter, she said softly. Percy glanced at Nico and nodded slowly. He's in good hands. If I can't walk him through it, Selena definitely can, or whoever he's most comfortable with, he said with an amused smile, as Nico jumped over to Jamie to show her his new arm. Bianca hummed. Hey, he added, and touched her shoulder. You and I are good, right? Bianca tilted her head. I know you're upset with me about hiding, but Bianca fixed the circlet on her head, then pursed her lips. I was a little hurt, she said. Percy's eyes fell down. It would have been nice to know we were in it together, she said, and then shook her head. But I could never hold it against you, she said quietly. Not for surviving, she studied him over. Were you scared? Terrified, Bianca grimaced. Well, she said and yanked at his hair. You don't have to be now. It wasn't entirely true, but Percy wanted it to be, so he nodded. They sat quietly for a moment, watching as everyone mulled about. Grover was making plants dance with his pipes, causing a small group to dance around the cabin as others clapped to the beat. Bianca sighed, tugging at the end of her braid thoughtfully. Have you heard from Vera? She suddenly asked. Percy shook his head. As far as he was aware, no other big three kids had returned. That was probably for the best. Hazel was a strange enough case. It looked as if she hadn't ever made it to camp to know anyone else, which was good, actually. She didn't have to live a life in mourning like Evelyn did. She wasn't completely open about her previous life, but Percy understood that. Bianca bit her lip. Hey, listen, she said, and looked around. I need to talk to you about something. Uh-oh. Should I be scared? He asked. Bianca gave a smile, but it was weak and unsure. My dad had a conversation with us, she said, and wrung her hands around her mug. I swore on the river Styx I wouldn't tell. I can't, she began, and then gave a huff of frustration. Just be careful around Hera, she said. Percy tilted his head. I think she's planning something. I wouldn't be surprised if she tried to drag you into it. What do you mean? Bianca began, but was cut off by Luke calling for Percy. This probably isn't the best place to discuss it, she admitted. Can we talk tomorrow, just you and I? I thought you swore on the river Styx. I can't tell you everything, she said, and then glanced at Hazel. But I'll give you as much as I can, she promised, and reached over to squeeze his hand. Tomorrow, all right? Percy nodded. And don't trust Hera, she reminded him. Right. as if Percy ever trusted Hera. Then again, she had been surprisingly amendable since Zeus's fall. Maybe that was a sign she was getting ready for something crazy. He didn't have a chance to ask, since Bianca walked over to talk to Rachel. Percy turned to where Luke was patiently waiting. "Hey," he said, and Percy looked over. "I've been meaning to give you something," he said, and held out a spiraled notebook. Percy frowned. "I wasn't sure who else should have it," he said, with a shake of his head. "Evelyn said she used to write in one. She used to write in one before she died, so I got her a new one," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I think she filled out a good chunk of it, but—" he trailed off. Percy took it slowly. "Thank you," he said, and bit his lip, flipping it open. Evelyn's handwriting filled the pages, and Percy was left with the strangest sense of déjà vu. He saw his name appear a few times alongside a few other familiar ones. He closed it and gave Luke a weak smile. "How's Olympus?" he asked, and the friendliness slipped right off of Luke's face as he shoved him with a slight grumble before marching back to sit with Rode. A laugh came from behind him. I think he's actually warming to them," Annabeth said as he turned. "He just doesn't want to admit it. It's hard to find forgiveness for everything they've done," she admitted. Percy laughed. There was definitely some truth to that. "Speaking of which, have you had a chance to talk to the gods?" she asked. Percy grabbed a hot chocolate Calypso sent floating in the air towards him and took a sip. It was creamy and sweet, and somehow the perfect temperature. "Next week, apparently," he said, and walked over to the couch. Annabeth followed. "I still can't decide exactly what to do," he admitted. "I mean, what is it that I even want?" he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All of them in Tartarus? All of them mortal? Livers eaten out by birds?" He bit his lip. "I don't know. I was hoping you had some ideas," he said, and collapsed on the sofa. Annabeth mulled that over. "It isn't like they could leave their jobs," she said slowly, tapping her fingers against her knee. "Well, not all of them at once." Her eyes flickered around the room to where Selena and Clarice were trying to gather people for some sort of party game. Poor Selena was trying, and Clarice threatened them to listen to her. "You didn't have to come to this," Percy said suddenly, shifting on the couch. Annabeth smiled at him before scooting over so she could throw her legs over his lap and sprawl out. "I wanted to," she said and yawned. "Besides, I've been doing some thinking about that stuff you told me, about the girl in the mountain." Percy hummed. "Right. Yes, that. I think," Annabeth said and shook her head, "there are other demigods." Percy waited. "Oh?" he said. "You don't say." Annabeth rolled her eyes and kicked him. "Non-Greek demigods," she clarified. "Oh, that made much more sense. Like we talked about before," she told him. Percy nodded. "That might be who you saw there. They could be Roman or Norse or, I don't know, Egyptian. There are plenty of other religions," she said. "You said she asked about Hercules and Atlas?" she asked. Percy nodded. Maybe Roman then, if she wasn't confused by them." She trailed off, yanking at a curl. It was how they spent the rest of the night, Percy and Annabeth quietly mulling over theories, only interrupted by people pulling them into games or movies, up until Percy finally ended up asleep. He was sprawled out with Lacey under his arm and someone's leg over his chest. Somehow it was all incredibly comfortable. It was honestly the best night of sleep he had ever had. It was soft and warm and long. Really long, actually. He wasn't sure how he knew that, but "You really are an arrogant one, aren't you?" A white light surrounded him. Percy shut up. He was lying somewhere or nowhere? It was hard to say. A woman was in front of him, draped in a peacock-colored dress, with black hair pinned up in some elaborate bun. Her eyes blazed a bright white before settling down. "Hera?" he greeted coldly. Her lips quirked up slightly. "Not quite," she said, and her form briefly flickered for a moment, almost as if she had turned into a very similar-looking relative. She walked up to him, staff in hand, and pointed the end of it under Percy's chin. "You've been a nuisance," she said with a sigh. "Hopefully this might rid us of you once and for all, or at least your vexatious attitude," she muttered. Percy glared up at her. "You think you know what is best for my family?" she asked him, and stepped forward. "For my husband? For the world?" Percy looked at her. "I don't know if I know best," he said, and then pushed her staff away from his face. but given the state of things, I can't do much worse than you. Not the smartest thing to say. He regretted nothing. Hera's eyes flared as she moved, possibly to hit him, but thought better of it. Athena is no easy foe, she finally said, but even she must be aware of the threats we face, she said, and knelt in front of Percy. You have no idea what doors your silly little games have opened up, she said, and then smiled. But don't worry, you can fix it yourself. Perhaps, if you're good, we can even allow you more of that compensation you seem so fond of, she said. Percy looked around. Part of him, a small part, was beginning to worry. He had no idea what she was talking about. He wasn't sure he liked it, though. You can't. Oh, but that's just it, Hera said, and waved her hand. The whiteness around them spiraled, like someone had dropped a bit of black ink that began to overtake the surrounding area. Despite your objections and rules and diplomacy, I am a goddess. I am a queen. I am powerful. It is in the natural order of things. I helped create your world. You should be grateful you were allowed to live in it, she said. Percy's eyes narrowed. Good luck, Percy Jackson. You may have hidden among the Greeks, but there will be no hiding here. Only power, if you are able to seize it. The black continued to take over the white around them, almost eating up the background as Percy tried to move backward. Worry not, Hera added. You won't be alone. I have plans for them all. Somehow, Percy was still pretty worried. He opened his mouth to yell, fight, charm speak, something, but Hera had disappeared. He looked around as the black got closer to him, and closer, and closer, and closer. He took a breath and forced himself to think. He needed to be calm. There was nothing to be done other than figure out how best to deal with this. He watched the ink trickle towards him and sighed, figuring he might as well bite the bullet. He knelt down and put out his hand. The black touched the tips of his fingers, and everything disappeared. The next time Percy woke, something was pressed against his arm. Groaning, he rolled over. Where was he? He blinked a few times, looking around to find himself lying in dirt by a river, and the smell of grass filling the air. More concerningly, however, was the girl pointing a stick at him. Hi, he greeted and looked over to see two more unconscious forms on either side of him. Who are you? I was going to ask you the same thing, the girl said with narrowed eyes. Where are we? I don't know, Percy said and sat up. The stick came closer to his neck. What's that? The girl asked him. What's what? Percy asked and followed her eyes to his arm. Oh, Percy blinked, fingers roaming over his arm in alarm. He lifted his sleeve up to find a tattoo moving from his shoulder to the back of his hand. A grapevine. It curled around him in full bloom. Most of the leaves were dark green, but scattered among them were golden leaves with letters inside. He peered down curiously to try and read them. One read CA in gold letters. PA was a little further down. There were others too, EL and TG alongside CB, and a few others he wasn't sure about. I don't know, he admitted slowly. He turned back to her. Do you know who they are? He added with a gesture to the voice beside them. The girl's eyes flickered over to them for a moment before shaking her head. No, she said slowly. Do you? I think we're establishing pretty quickly that neither of us know anything, he sighed, then bit his lip. Do you know your name? The girl hesitated, then bit her lip. I think my name is Anna, she said uncertainly. Do you know your name? She frowned. Percy bit his lip. Perseus, he decided. It didn't seem completely right, but he wasn't sure he should be allowing strangers to call him by nicknames quite yet. From beside him, one of the boys moved. Anna spun around and whacked him with the stick. Son of a why? The boy demanded, as he jerked back. Who are you? Anna, I think, she greeted. Who are you? You look older, she noted suspiciously. Did you kidnap us? The boy blinked a few times before looking around. He stared at Anna before moving to Percy, and then the third figure on the ground. Oh my god, he said. Why am I by a river with a bunch of random children? I'm not a child, Percy objected, and then the boy looked around in alarm. No, he said. Both Percy and Anna jumped. Are you kidding me? he demanded. There has to be another adult here, he muttered and stood up. Anna waved her stick around threateningly. How old are you two? He added. Anna paused. 16? Percy guessed. That seemed right. The boy groaned. What about you? And what's your name? He added. The boy gave a long-suffering sigh. I don't know, like 20-something? He frowned and ran a hand through his hair. I'm Luke, I think, he said with a frown, and then pointed at them. Do you remember, anything? He asked. Percy and Anna shook their heads. Of course not, he sighed and knelt by the last member of their impromptu posse. Hello? Are you an adult? He asked, hopefully, pushing the boy's shoulder. Damn it, he sighed when the other kid groaned. You're like 12. 17, the boy coughed and rolled over. Who what? Anna, Perseus, Luke, Anna said, pointing to each of them. You are? Hugo, he yawned and stretched out. Are we dead? He asked, looking around. Percy blinked. That was a good theory, actually. Luke threw up his hands. Why aren't there adults in the afterlife? He demanded, and then frowned. Did I kill you? He whispered. Hugo laughed. You don't seem like the killing type. Only for 10 seconds. And you haven't killed anyone, Hugo said brightly and stood up, dusting himself off. He paused, looking at Percy with a slight frown. He tilted his head a bit, brows coming together as he stared. Percy stared right back. Sorry, he finally said uncertainly. You just seem... He trailed off with a slight shake of his head. I don't know, he murmured, and then looked around them. Percy shrugged. Right, he said, and looked around. Off in the distance, he could see a worn-down road with a mini-mart beside it. Fearing that was their best bet, he stretched and stood up, ignoring the group all trying to gauge the circumstances as he started walking. Hey! Luke shouted. No. If I kidnap you, then you can't leave. I thought you didn't kidnap us, Percy called back. I'm not sure, Luke growled and grabbed Hugo's arm to drag him after Percy. Anna followed suit, bright eyes intently surveying the world around them. Beth, keep up. You said her name was Anna, Hugo said. Anna wrinkled her nose. Beth doesn't seem wrong, she frowned and looked at Luke as she climbed over some rocks. Maybe you and I knew each other, she reasoned to him, then considered. You have blonde hair too. We could be related. Luke only shrugged in return. That is the strangest looking building I have ever seen, Hugo said, as they cut through some taller grass, having the dew and seeds stick to their legs as they got closer to the asphalt road that served as a bridge across the river. It's so bright, he mused. Do they need that many lights? He asked, wrinkling his nose. Percy wanted to ask what dark cave he had grown up in, but that seemed uncalled for and unproductive given that none of them remembered, well, anything. Be nice, a girl's voice echoed in the back of his head. You could try being charming every so often, you know? Percy bit his lip. They were approaching the building now. Despite clearly being open, there was nobody else inside, not even a cashier. The automatic doors slid open with a beep to announce their presence. Hugo froze. The door moved, he said, absolutely astounded. They all turned to him. You saw that, right? The door just zoop, he said, with a vague gesture to the door moving. The door shut again, and Hugo's mouth had dropped. My gum, he said, almost breathlessly. Wait, look! He waved his hand in front of the door, so they opened once again. Are you three not seeing this? He demanded. It's pretty neat, Percy said slowly, and then looked at the others who shrugged. Wow. My gum? Luke repeated and walked inside. I can't deal with this. Hello? He called as they all entered. Are there adults here? He asked as the rest of them entered. Nobody answered. Please? We should get food and water, Anna said, marching in. See if there's a phone we can use to call someone, she said, and looked around. Does anyone know someone we could call? She asked. They all shook their heads. Alright, we can call the police, she sighed and started grabbing some chips. You walked around, frowning a bit at Cokes. Since when do they put the stuff in these ugly cans? He shook his head. I think we might be in hell, he said solemnly, and walked to where a sink was next to the produce. He turned it on, frowning a little at the water for a moment. Or not, he said, and turned the opposite handle underneath. After a few seconds, he gasped. No way, he said, looking absolutely floored. Hot water is coming out of those pipes? He tilted his head. Spectacular, he whispered, and put his hand underneath. Are you seeing this? Luke stared, looking exhausted. Alright, so he somehow lost more memories than the rest of us, he murmured. Hugo ignored them as he kept playing with the water. I mean, I know this all existed, but I thought only rich people had stuff like this, he said, and laughed again. Is this a renowned establishment? He asked, looking in wonder around the mini-mart. 5-star quality, Percy said, though he couldn't help but smile a little as he ran his hand over the register. Anna walked over and tilted her head. It looks old, she noted. Percy hummed. Not high-tech at all, she mused, and then nodded. 1 second, she said, and stood back. Then kicked it. Hard. The only thing rattled before the drawer popped. That doesn't make any sense. The thing rattled before the drawer popped open slightly. Anna moved back and pried it the rest of the way open, grabbing the cash inside. Luke glanced at her. You're already my favourite, he told her, and Percy scowled. Sorry. Percy rolled his eyes. It's alright. You're already my least favourite for kidnapping us. There's no proof of that, Luke began heatedly, but Percy held up a hand. Do you guys hear that? He asked cautiously. The others all paused. A low sort of growling sound was coming from somewhere. He looked around, tensing just in time to see something launch forward over the rack of chips. Everyone yelled out in alarm. There was a crashing sound as the lights flickered and someone rose from the mess. Or someone rose. The thing was on all fours, glowing lowly. It was a strange growl, though. It didn't quite sound like an animal. Not completely, anyway. Anna looked around for a moment before turning to the glass case behind her and kicking it so that glass spilled everywhere. She picked up a piece and held it up threateningly, ignoring her hand bleeding slightly as she did so. Luke sighed and picked up a piece himself. Percy looked back at the creature before noticing the strangest flash of colour. He moved forward and Anna struck first, hitting him with her shard of glass before Hugo appeared from nowhere to hit the thing over the head with a pipe from one of the racks. There was a howl of objections before Hugo was knocked back with a flash of gold, claw marks forming over his arm. Wait, Percy said, and the thing looked up, circling them slightly. He's human. Not quite, the stranger said. He was a boy about their age. Well, Anna and Percy's age, with blonde hair and vaguely familiar blue eyes. He was dressed in a tattered purple shirt and torn jeans. More intriguing, however, was the pipe of metal over his fingers. Percy kind of thought they were brass knuckles, but the boy wasn't holding them in place. They sat on him like interconnected rings on each hand, and instead of brass, they were gold. He looked at them with bared teeth before jerking his hands down. Immediately, the golden rings formed into claws over his fingers. Luke stepped back. Where is your mother? Hunting, the boy answered, and crouched slightly. Percy narrowed his eyes. He wasn't sure how he felt about this random stranger, but for some reason he found himself unimpressed. Probably should be terrified, but honestly, he was just kind of annoyed. Who are you? Who are you? Percy asked moodily. And why are you covered in blood? He added, nodding to the splatter of red over his arm. The boy paused, eyes not leaving Percy as he raised his hand to lick the blood off. Ew, Percy informed him flatly. The stranger bared his teeth in response. You know, Hugo said helpfully and bounded over to the sink. They have running water here. Just casually. You can use that if you need to wash up, he said. The boy twitched. I'm going to kill you first, he decided and straightened up. Hugo frowned, looking more offended than afraid. My name is Jason, he said, and looked between them all. Now tell me where she is. Where's who? Luke asked. Jason growled again, holding up one of his golden claws threateningly. I don't know who you— Jesus Christ, Luke said, and ran a hand over his face. Why are there no adults around here? He demanded. Jason's eyes narrowed. Aren't you an adult? He asked slowly. Luke closed his eyes. Not enough for this, he muttered and pinched the bridge of his nose. Ethan, he barked. What are you doing? He snapped. Hugo looked up from where he was rummaging through the spilled contents of the floor to frown. My name is Hugo, he reminded him. Luke opened his mouth, eyes a little puzzled at his own slip-up, before Jason snapped at them. Anna crossed her arms over her chest, giving nothing away as the others all readied themselves for whatever attack was coming. Wait, Hugo yelled and grabbed one of the fallen candy bars. I have this under control, he said, and waved the candy bar out. Jason froze. See? He asked. This always happens. See? He asked and wriggled again. You want this? He asked. Jason blinked at him. It's good. It's, what is this? He asked and frowned at the packaging. This candy kind of looks strange, he said and then shrugged. Here you go, he said and tossed it. The bar hit Jason's chest and fell to the ground as he stood completely still. Hugo nodded. That didn't work. Chocolate? Jason asked suspiciously. Hugo blinked a few times before snapping his fingers and scooping something else up. Jason's eyes widened fractionally. Jerky, he said, much more enthusiastically. It isn't beef, is it? He asked cautiously. Hugo looked over at the bag. Venison. Yes, please, Jason said, brightening. Hugo beamed before walking over and handing him the bag. Jason's claws disappeared back into the rings as he tore the bag open and began eating. Hugo patted his head. Jason stiffened. My bad, I overstepped, Hugo said and backed up. Jason went back to eating. Percy rolled his eyes. Was this how it was going to work? Some guy who got lost on his way to Ferrycon was going to bully them before clawing their faces off? No, he didn't think so. Percy took a few strides over and yanked the bag out of Jason's hands. In retrospect, maybe not the most diplomatic approach. Jason didn't even hesitate to attack. Not that it did much good. For all his show, it felt a little like a puppy was clawing at him over a wolf. What is wrong with you? Percy shouted as he kicked Jason in the throat. Did you just try and bite me? Why do you taste like that? Jason gagged and then made a face. Your skin didn't even break, he said and poked at Percy's arm. What are you? He asked and poked again. Percy slapped his hand away. Do all of you taste like statues? He asked the other three. Anna, Luke, and Hugo all stepped back. Whatever, just come on, he groaned and picked Jerky back up. Percy didn't move. I can still find a way to rip your throat out, pretty boy, he added. Percy sneered. None if I rip yours out first. What if nobody ripped out anybody's throats? Luke asked dryly. Jason made a face. And where are we going? What's going on? He asked. We wake up in the middle of nowhere with no memories and... No memories? Jason cut him off. Everyone nodded. Are you kidding me? He asked. Again? Have we lost our memories before? Anna asked flatly. Jason threw his hands up. Last week, there were 3 more of you wayward rabbits who came mucking about with nothing in your heads, he said. Anna reared back at that last comment, but kept quiet. Luca ended up eating one because he was too cowardly, but the other 2 went to camp. He sighed and shook his head. So you don't know where she is? He asked. Sounding a little defeated. Wait, who is? Anna asked. You haven't given us a name. Rena, Jason asked, and looked between them. They all shook their head. Jason took a long, measured breath. Well, do you at least know who she is? Everyone shook their head. Jason deflated slightly before walking over to a microwave on the counter and ripping off the paneling before tearing out some wires. The whole thing sparked, but Jason only balled them up in his hands before releasing it. The sparks blinked through an array of colors before forming some sort of outline of a person. Do any of you happen to know her? Jason asked, and from the static formed a girl. She looked a little older than Percy, with black hair and dark green eyes. Hugo stiffened suddenly. Percy barely noticed. He had the strangest feeling as he looked at her. Not quite familiarity, but maybe something akin to it? I don't think so, he said slowly. Hugo stepped forward, staring. She's beautiful, he said, voice uncertain and cautious. He reached out, fingers brushing the image. Who is she? He asked Jason. I have no idea, he admitted. A lot of strange things have been happening. I think she was one of us, he said slowly. Rena said she saw her once. Her and a boy on top of a mountain. I don't know much about it. He frowned and waved the static away. We don't have time to explain all of that, though. There are more pressing issues, he decided and walked out. Everyone froze, looking at one another before staring off in the direction Jason had went. Well, it was better than nothing. Everyone, in silent agreement, turned and followed. Pressing issues? Anna called as they went back out into the forest area. Jason picked up some leaves and sniffed them before turning and walking a few feet. He leaned down and sniffed something else before standing up and walking a little left. Like what? Raina is missing, Jason said immediately. I want her back. And I want whoever took her to die, he added thoughtfully. Also, there are rumors of political upheaval on Olympus. Some even say my father has been overthrown. If that's the truth, then Camp Jupiter will be at war soon enough. They'll all want someone different on the throne, he rolled his eyes. Percy looked at the others. What the hell was he talking about? What if they already picked someone new on Olympus? Hugo asked, not looking nearly as fazed by this information. He merely seemed a little puzzled, and I turned to stare at him. What? Look at this place. It's weird enough. Why not throw in some random kings? He asked. Luke shook his head, but Jason acted as if he didn't even notice the sidebar as he continued sniffing around. Well, in that case, the new emperor better be prepared. We're loyal to Jupiter for a reason. If they overthrew him for power, then they aren't getting any support here, he said, and then nodded to himself as he hopped over a fallen log. Then there are the doors of death. The what? Entrance and exit to the underworld, Jason said conversationally. Assassin pried them open, and now someone has gone and kidnapped Lisa's. It's been a mess. Oh yeah, hate it when that happens, Percy muttered. They were approaching a stone house that looked somewhere between collapsing and somehow being built even bigger. Low growls came from inside, yellow eyes watching them from shadows. Jason bared his teeth, and they disappeared again. Luke grabbed Anna's shoulder, absently pulling her a bit closer as they continued on their march. And what makes you think these doors of death are even open? Percy asked, as he followed him inside. Another human was there. A boy was perched on the window, absently twirling a blade between his fingers. He froze when he saw them enter, eyes widening as he hopped off the ledge to join them. Yeah, he said, almost as if he didn't believe it. Percy turned to him, a little confused by the greeting. Had this stranger been expecting them? The boy opened his mouth to say something else, but this time words didn't come out. He frowned, hand fluttering to his throat before giving a low growl of frustration. Nico! He hissed, making everyone aside from Jason jump. From the shadows, a form flickered. You said you would stop doing that. I don't mean to, the newcomer snapped back. Percy tilted his head. It just happens, he said, and a boy who looked to be around 13 stepped out of the shadows. He was small, with dark eyes and hair. Like Jason, he was also dressed in torn jeans and a ragged shirt. Most bewildering, however, was the middle arm. Whoa, Hugo whispered and stared down in fascination. He began but trailed off. The boy gave Hugo a curious look before grinning. Yep, it's metal. Got it bitten off by a giant snake. I'm Nico, by the way. Don't believe a word he says, the other boy groused. He changes the story every time you ask. He told me that he lost it while arm wrestling Vulcan. That is also true, Nico said solemnly before shifting a bit. Despite the pleasant demeanor, he seemed unable to meet their eyes. Also, stop ratting me out, he said. Then his eyes widened. Right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, he said quickly when the other boy's mouth snapped shut. His eyes burned with irritation. I'm sorry, Nico said and pouted. Stop glaring at me. The other boy's face softened. Wait, Nico frowned. I did it again. I hate you, the boy muttered. Jason pointed a bone. Where did he get a bone? At him. And this is how we know the doors of death have been opened, he said. Anna's eyes flicked between them in confusion. The unnamed boy gave a long, suffering sigh before turning to them and giving a dazzling smile. Yeah, Nico is a son of Pluto. The fact that I am forced to follow his dumb orders is because I am dead. I was dead a little bit ago, he said, with another scathing look at Nico. At least that's what the rumors are. 1 second I was in Elysium eating a bowl of grapes without any fear, and the next thing I know I'm here, he said with a shrug. Percy frowned at him. Did this boy normally eat grapes with fear? He didn't understand what was happening at all. Nice sweatshirt, by the way, he added. Percy blinked a few times before looking down at a plain red sweatshirt tied around his waist. His fingers ran over it, a little baffled by the amount of comfort he felt touching it. Thank you, Percy finally said. He wasn't sure why he had decided to compliment his sweatshirt of all things. I like your, bracelet, he decided with a nod toward the silver band, with a dove on it that sat on the boy's wrist. Oh, thanks, he said, touching it. It was a gift a long time ago. A sort of family heirloom from an old friend of mine, he said, sounding amused and sad at once. Percy nodded. He wasn't sure what it was, but what the hell? He wasn't sure what it was, but there was something strange about this boy. Perhaps it was the fact he had come from the dead. Percy worked to keep his expression neutral before responding. And who are you exactly? There was a long pause. Then the boy laughed, looking down. Right, yes, we're just meeting, aren't we? What's your name? He asked, ignoring Jason, watching them with sharp eyes. Oh, Percy said and looked around. This is Luke, Anna, or maybe Beth, and Hugo, and Perseus, he added, and held out his hand. The boy took it with a wry smile. Perseus, he repeated. Percy shrugged. There was a small thump as Jason jumped from the ledge he had been on to land in front of them. Never mind that now, he said. Castor, you'll need to head out to camp soon, he added to the other boy. Then turned to where Luke, Percy, Anna, and Hugo were all standing. For now, it's time to see if Lupa is going to let them live. Okay. We're done. That was so long. Like, it really was. I'm about to be interrupted because my brother just got back home. Yep, there it is. Okay, I'm back. Anyway, I love this so much. Obviously, not. Yeah, I'm going to be reading the other works. So, what is the next one? It is Descendants of Olympus. Is this one? Yeah, this one's finished. It is double the length, more than double actually, so this one will be a whole lot longer. But it also has 20 chapters. So that'll be fun. Yeah, I love this series so much. Genuinely. It is one of the only ones that I read before, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna podfic that one because I love it. So yeah. What else? I love the cast is back. I remember him coming back as a ghost, and I was like, don't say anything about it because I was like, ooh, I did forget he died. But that's because I remembered him in Descendants of Olympus. I forgot he was a ghost though. So that's fun. Hope you enjoyed this. You might have seen that I re-uploaded chapter 11. That was because I didn't realize that it was like the recording was doubled for a little bit, and that wasn't much, but it was like easy to fix. So I just didn't even delete it. I just put it on private and then uploaded it again. Don't worry, I did not upload. I did not record twice today. I merely recorded once and fixed the video because of whoops. Anyway, tell me what you guys thought of this. Do you want me to continue the series, Descendants of Olympus? Like, I would want to continue it. But also, I know what happened. Do I remember fully? No, but not at all. But I've also already read it. So, tell me what you guys think. I think that's all. Oh, I love this series. It's so silly. With none of them remembering anything. I completely forgot Hugo was with them. Completely. And also that little nod of Jason showing them, be like, do you know this girl? You can be like, oh, she's so pretty. She's so pretty. Can I find her, please? That was adorable. I fully thought they were talking about Raina for a second, and I was like, huh? Oh no, it's Evelyn. Okay. Is Evelyn gonna come back? I don't actually remember. But like the doors of death are open. Is Pollux coming back, or is it just Castor for now? I do not remember. I seriously do not remember. I'll find out soon enough. Anyway, basically, tell me what you guys thought of the series. Do you want me to continue it, or are you done with it? I'm probably going to take a break with a different series for a bit. For like, I don't know, maybe only a short time. Maybe only like a couple one shots or like two shots and stuff like that. I don't have a clue. I'll figure it out. I don't plan anything. I don't pre-record things. I just kind of go with the flow with the day. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Bye bye.